Have you ever realized that you have known someone for years, maybe even consider them a close friend, yet you know absolutely nothing about their actual personal life? You know their favorite movies, their sense of humor, and their opinions on current events, but you have no idea who they are dating, what they struggle with deeply, or how they really feel when the doors are closed. They are the human equivalent of a locked vault. They listen to your problems, give great advice, and are incredibly present, but the moment the spotlight shifts to their inner world, they masterfully deflect. In a world that constantly begs us to overshare, where people broadcast their breakfasts, their breakups, and their daily grievances on the internet, choosing to keep everything private seems almost rebellious. It stands out. But what is actually going on beneath the surface of someone who refuses to let others in? Is it a profound sense of inner peace and boundaries, or is it a psychological defense mechanism built from years of pain? Today, we are going to dive deep into the psychology of highly private people. We will explore the hidden reasons why some individuals build fortresses around their personal lives, the psychological frameworks that drive this behavior, and how keeping everything private impacts their mental health and relationships. To understand the intensely private person, we first have to look at the psychological foundation of trust. For many people who keep their lives under wraps, privacy is not just a preference, it is a learned survival strategy. Human beings are biologically wired for connection, which means we are naturally inclined to share our experiences with our tribe. When someone actively suppresses that instinct, there is usually a compelling psychological reason. Often, that reason is rooted in past trauma or betrayal. Think about how trust works. Trust is essentially a psychological gamble. When you share a vulnerability, a secret, or an intimate detail of your life, you are handing the other person ammunition. You are betting that they will use it to understand you better, not to hurt you. But for someone who has been deeply betrayed in the past, whether by a gossiping friend, a manipulative partner, or an emotionally careless parent, that gamble resulted in a profound loss. Psychologically, the brain adapts to protect itself from future pain. This adaptation often manifests as hypervigilance. The private person has learned through painful experience that information is power, and giving other people information about their life equates to giving away the power to be hurt, judged, or manipulated. In psychology, we often see this tied to an avoidant attachment style. Individuals with an avoidant attachment style learned early in life that relying on others is emotionally dangerous or disappointing. Consequently, they learn to self-soothe and handle their problems completely internally. If they do not share their struggles, nobody can use those struggles against them, and nobody can let them down by failing to support them. Moving beyond trust, the desire for extreme privacy is heavily intertwined with the concept of control. We all have what psychologists call a locus of control. This refers to how much control a person feels they have over the events in their life. People who guard their privacy fiercely often have a strong need for an internal locus of control. They want to be the sole authors of their own narrative. When you tell people about your life, you are inviting their opinions, their judgments, and their unsolicited advice. If you tell people about your goals, they might ask about your progress, creating external pressure. If you tell people about your relationship problems, they will form opinions about your partner that you cannot easily erase later. By keeping everything private, these individuals maintain complete control over how they are perceived. There is a deep psychological comfort in knowing that nobody can judge a situation they know absolutely nothing about. However, this need for control can sometimes border on perfectionism. The private person might feel that if they let people see their messy, unpolished reality, they will be rejected. They carefully curate the version of themselves they present to the world, often highly competent, calm, and collected. Because the thought of being perceived as vulnerable or out of control is psychologically terrifying to them. Privacy becomes the ultimate shield against the unpredictable nature of other people's opinions. It is crucial to differentiate between someone who is hiding out of fear and someone who is simply protecting their emotional bandwidth. Not all privacy is rooted in trauma. Sometimes it is purely a matter of neurology and energy conservation. This brings us to introverts and highly sensitive people. In psychological terms, introverts process stimuli differently than extroverts. While extroverts often process their thoughts and emotions externally by talking them out with others, introverts process internally. For an introvert, the very act of explaining their inner world to someone else requires a massive expenditure of cognitive and emotional energy. Furthermore, highly sensitive people experience the world with the volume turned all the way up. They absorb the moods, reactions, and micro-expressions of the people around them. If a highly sensitive person shares a personal problem and the listener reacts with anxiety, pity, or judgment, the sensitive person now has to manage their own emotions regarding the problem, plus the emotional reaction of the listener. It is utterly exhausting. For these individuals, keeping things private is an act of emotional regulation. It is a boundary. By not sharing every detail of their lives, they protect their inner peace from the chaotic, noisy emotional static of the outside world. They are not necessarily hiding, they are simply conserving their energy for the things and the few specific people that truly matter to them. Another massive psychological pillar supporting extreme privacy is hyper-independence. This is a trauma response that is often glorified in our modern hustle culture. The hyper-independent person operates under the core belief that I am the only one I can truly rely on. This mindset usually develops when a person was forced to grow up too fast, or when their primary caregivers were emotionally unavailable. They learned that asking for help is futile or burdensome. As adults, this translates into a fierce, almost aggressive self-reliance. They keep their financial struggles, their career anxieties, and their emotional breakdowns entirely to themselves, because asking for help feels like a personal failure. The tragic irony of the hyper-independent, highly private person is that they are often the most reliable people in the room. They are the ones everyone else goes to for help. They are excellent problem solvers for others because they are so practiced at solving everything on their own. But when it comes to their own lives, they compartmentalize. They view their personal struggles as a burden that they have no right to place on anyone else's shoulders. They keep their lives private out of a misplaced sense of consideration, silently carrying the weight of the world while smiling and asking you how your day was. We must also candidly address the darker, heavier side of extreme privacy: shame. Renowned researcher Brené Brown defines shame as the intensely painful feeling or experience of believing that we are flawed and therefore unworthy of love and belonging. For some people who keep everything private, their silence is built on a foundation of profound shame and imposter syndrome. They are terrified of being truly seen. They operate under the deeply ingrained, painful belief that if people truly knew the real me, if they knew my thoughts, my past, my failures, or my insecurities, they would leave. This creates a brutal cycle of cognitive dissonance. They desperately crave connection and intimacy, but they are simultaneously terrified of it. They build a wall to protect themselves from rejection, but that same wall prevents them from experiencing the unconditional love and acceptance they actually need to heal. They keep their lives private not because they want to, but because they feel they have to in order to remain acceptable to society. Over time, hiding one's authentic self requires an immense amount of psychological energy, often leading to chronic loneliness, low-grade depression, and a pervasive feeling of emptiness, even when surrounded by friends. It is important to state, grounded in psychological reality, that keeping things private is not inherently pathological. In fact, in a society obsessed with oversharing, possessing a strong sense of privacy can be a profound indicator of emotional maturity and robust mental health. When privacy stems from a place of security rather than a place of fear, psychologists refer to it as emotional autonomy. An emotionally autonomous person does not require external validation to know their worth. They don't need to post the relationship online to know it is happy. They don't need to broadcast their promotions or successes to feel proud of themselves. And they don't need to trauma dump their bad days onto their friends to process their emotions. These individuals possess a rich, vibrant inner life. They have developed strong internal coping mechanisms. They value their own counsel, and they deeply respect their own boundaries. For the emotionally secure private person, secrecy isn't a wall to keep people out. It is a beautifully cultivated garden that they simply choose to enjoy by themselves, inviting others in only when they have built deep, proven trust over time. So, how do we navigate relationships with people who operate this way? The most important thing you can do is avoid taking their privacy personally. Human beings naturally want to feel special, and we often equate being let in with being loved. When a private friend or partner keeps things from us, our ego tells us they don't trust me, therefore they don't value me. But as we have explored, their privacy is almost always about their own internal psychological framework, not a reflection of your worth as a friend or partner. Pressuring a private person to open up is the fastest way to make them retreat further into their shell. Interrogation triggers their defense mechanisms. Instead, the key to connecting with a highly private person is creating an environment of consistent low-pressure safety. You show them that you are a safe harbor by being non-judgmental about the small things. You earn the right to hear their inner thoughts by demonstrating that you can keep confidences and that you respect their boundaries. Sometimes the most profound intimacy with a private person happens not when they finally tell you their deepest secrets, but when you comfortably sit in silence with them, proving that you are perfectly happy just being by their side, without needing them to perform or overshare to earn their keep. The psychology of keeping everything private is a complex tapestry woven from threads of past experiences, attachment styles, energy levels, and self-preservation. Whether it is a protective shield built from trauma, an energy-saving mechanism for the sensitive soul, or a quiet display of emotional autonomy, extreme privacy is always a highly functional psychological choice for the person practicing it. If you are a fiercely private person, recognize the immense strength in your self-reliance, but also gently ask yourself if your walls are keeping you safe, or just keeping you lonely. It is okay to let trusted people help you carry the load. And if you love a private person, offer them patience. Their inner world is a fortress, but with enough time, safety, and understanding, the drawbridge does eventually come down.